Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the new season of the Mercedes-Benz South Africa ATK Pro Series. I am so hyped and excited. We've been waiting a long time. It's been a long off season and a lot has happened the last couple of months, in case you guys hadn't noticed. First, we will be at Laguna Seca, but before we talk about that circuit, of course, none of this would be possible without our partners K9H and MSA. This event is officially sanctioned by Motorsport South Africa. And the reason I sound so hyped up for you guys that don't know about this is that is a huge deal. That is a big deal. There's never been a situation like this in South Africa where a sim racing event has been sanctioned by MSA, and certainly not one which has been partnered by a major manufacturer. I spent some time with the guys of Mercedes this week, and they are very excited to be joining the series, and they're very excited to see who is the best sim racer in the country. This is the Premier Division. This is the Premier League. And today, the ATK Pro Series stands tall as we take a look to find out who is the best in the country when it comes to Assetto Corsa and sim racing. As mentioned, of course, today would not be possible without Mercedes-Benz, K9H, and MSA. And guys, today is going to be a good day. We've got two sessions for you guys today, two qualifying sessions. No racing just yet. You're going to have to wait a little bit longer for the racing action to take place. But today will be two qualifying sessions split into two even rounds. And these drivers will basically be seeding for the rest of the season. Now, there are some ways to get from Pro-Am into Pro. There are some ways to get from Pro into Pro-Am over the course of the season. But today, the drivers need to figure out how they can go as fast as possible to secure a position in our top 60. We've got two classes today, Pro-Am and Pro. We've got 55 drivers, and I tell you what, a lot of these guys are vying for that pro position. Now, we've got two division qualifiers happening today, as I said, with 55 drivers, and I'm excited. I can't wait to see. There are lots of new names, lots of new faces. We've got Division 1 starting shortly, and the drivers have also been swapping cars. They've been changing, some of the guys to the Mercedes-Benz, of course, some of the guys to different cars, and I think we're going to have a lot to talk about, myself and my co-commentator, Marius Roberts, today, who once again joins me in the commentary booth. But this time, you're visiting Cape Town. What's going on, Marius? Welcome to Cape Town.
Listen, I'm like the real deal now. I feel like a proper gamer. I walked into the ATK arena the first time, and I'm like, this is a proper setup. And so is the ATK Pro Series. Like you so well mentioned right in the beginning, Ernest, brilliant to have Mercedes-Benz as a manufacturer supporting. And I think it just speaks volumes about what happened last year. You know, it was a groundbreaking year for sim racing, and ATK powered the Pro Series brilliantly, and now we sit with some big hitters. Kyle Arminana, obviously part of the game. Motorsport South Africa having their backing and their partnership, I think, is crucial, because last year we were all talking about how important it is that online racing, sim racing, is taken seriously and is viewed as the real deal. Well, now it is, when you've kind of got those names backing the whole thing up. But I like the way this is going to go this year, because I think having 6 rounds makes it really cool. The guys know the circuits, the rounds are outlined. But for me, what I think is also great is that they've expanded the playing field, so to speak. So I know we're going to be having racing with the guys on PlayStation, and what is really cool, it's a real endorsement for Mercedes-Benz too, because having a look at that, you know, the guys here don't get to pick their car, and that's the car they race for the season. Each round, the guys are going to be driving a set car. So now every driver, it's equal playing field. So it's really cool that we're looking after guys with Assetto Corsa, and obviously looking after guys on PlayStation as well. So it's going to keep us busy, but I'm looking forward to seeing some new guys. I'm sure when we look at our qualifying runs today, it's going to be a lot of the usual suspects, guys that entertained us last year, but I'm looking forward to seeing a couple of new names coming through on the other side of the gaming world as well.
Yeah, there are a few new names, and some of the names might sound a little bit familiar. For example, Daniel Rowe. I don't think he's competed in the Pro Series.
No,
not as far as I know.
No, he hasn't. I mean, he was, you know, last year we obviously were doing a lot of work with Volkswagen Motorsport, and Dan and I have actually raced against each other, and he's such a good oak.
Did he at least manage to beat you?
No, listen, he definitely did beat me. I mean, he was showing me the way around. But that is what we saw last year. You know, Keegan Masters, Daniel, the two of them teammates in real world and also teammates in the online gaming world as well. So it's great when you start seeing the big hitters in real racing getting into this as well. We spoke about it a lot last year, Ernest. I mean, when you had guys like Max Verstappen, Kelvin van der Linde, all of them, when there was no real racing, this is where they got to show their other talent, and that is crucial, I think, because the two do exist hand in hand. And I mean, the drivers sharpen their skills online and then obviously take it to the real world. So this for me is great that we've got someone like Daniel Rowe racing with us again. But I think they'll realize it's not that easy. The guys that we saw last year, Zairesa, Bashir Jadwat, I mean, these guys are machines.
Speaking of machines, one of the guys that I think might be someone to look out for is Elric Enslen, number 888 in the Mercedes-Benz as well. He's actually racing for Coach Dave Academy, and I think there are going to be some guys that are going to shake things up this year, Marius. He might be one of those guys. I was checking out the practice this morning, and he was on top of the logs, and it's nice to see some new blood get injected into the Pro Series.
Look, I think it's also cool that, Pro Series is also learned. So I think that for me was what was so cool, is that, the guys took on, how can we make the series better? What's going to work? And legitimizes it. So I think all the guys that might have been racing on other platforms, they know this is where you really need to be. This needs to be taken seriously. So you'll find a lot of new guys are going to be rising to the top, I think. And I like the fact that we've changed a couple of the rules too. You mentioned earlier the fact that, last year the guys were in for 12 rounds and that's the car. And the car's going to work on some tracks and not at others. That's reality. But I like the fact that in 6 rounds they can make a change. And I wonder how much strategy is going to come into it. The guys know the circuits. They're going to try and find the car that works for the first 3 maybe, and then do a change for the next 3. So there's a lot of strategy that goes into it.
I like the way you think, Maurice. That was a thought that you brought to our conversation off air early on, that the guys are going to possibly change based on the circuit. Now, speaking of circuit, we are at Laguna Seca. More specifically, we are at WeatherTech Laguna Seca in the US of A, a circuit that I've always dreamed of going to and racing on. But you shattered my thoughts about this track earlier on. I thought this was one of the legendary tracks of the world. And you're saying a lot of the guys don't like driving here.
Ernest, I mean, if it wasn't for the corkscrew, I don't think anybody would know about Laguna Seca. I think it would just be another dirt track in California. But look, the track's been around for years. 1957, I think, is when they first built it. But when you speak to the drivers, it's kind of a nothing circuit. So when you actually say to them, what are your top circuits? I can guarantee you Laguna Seca won't be there. And most of the guys kind of just go, nah, it's actually a crap track. And apparently, just chatting off air as well, Dan was saying, even within Assetto Corsa, it's not a highly rated circuit as well. So, the corkscrew is what everyone talks about. I mean, it's massive. It's got an elevation change of 18 meters. So very, very technical in terms of nailing that. But I think, like you said, one corner doesn't make a track. And that's literally all we talk about at Laguna Seca is the corkscrew. That's it.
I wonder how this is going to play out, because we've now got a situation. I've done some laps around the circuit, and we've now got a situation where the guys are doing, basically they're going to be doing division qualifying. And if the corners are they're tricky though, the way they open up and the way they close in. And I think a lot of the guys, they might not like it because the track could catch them out, and then we're going to see some guys bubbling to the surface. Now, is it because the circuit's quite difficult, or do you think it's because, are there other reasons why the guys aren't that into the circuit?
No, look, for me, I think the real challenging corner is actually, turn 2, which is the Andretti hairpin, I think it is. They've renamed it now, but I mean, it's a very technical corner. It's a double apex. That's kind of the real only overtaking opportunity, in my opinion, around the circuit. Now, what's cool today, we're not racing, so it might be fun from a qualifying perspective, but I think from a racing perspective, it's not a great circuit for good racing. It becomes quite follow my leader pedestrian, not a lot of opportunities for overtaking. So you might find the bike guys like it a lot more, because there is more opportunity for overtaking on the bikes. But I think in the cars, it's a good thing we're not racing.
We've seen some exciting MotoGP races here over the years, that's for sure.
And World Superbikes, it's brilliant.
Correct. Yeah. And I think what you're saying about this being a time attack setup that we kind of got today, this might all work out. Work out.
It's going to be good, because when we do eventually go racing out, because Laguna Seca is on the circuit list, I think. the cool thing is qualifying is then going to be cracker. So I'm having a look at the list now. They're actually not racing here, so it kind of works in their favor. But this would have been the perfect track where you've got to nail qualifying, because I think that makes the difference in the race. So yeah, it's cool. It's just nice that we're going to different circuits. I mean, I'm looking through the list, a lot to look forward to. We're going to Imola, where obviously Spa everyone knows really well, but a couple of different tracks. Alton Park in the UK. We're also going to Donington, which is brilliant. Mazana, and then obviously Kyalami, and everyone knows and loves Kyalami. Look, that for us is where the real showdown comes, I think. A great circuit, nice lineup of different tracks, and I think the two tricky ones are going to be Alton Park and Donington. They're a little bit different, so yeah, I'm glad that we've mixed it up this year, not going to the same old tracks.
Alton Park and Donington, of course, made famous by British touring car racing over the years. Lots of visits there by the BTCC, but this year sees the Pro Series, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz South Africa and ATK, also visit those circuits. Now, this year we've also got, and I'm giggling at the thought because I mentioned this in one of our meetings early on in our Pro Series days, and the guy says we might look into it for next season. And this season we've got ballast. We've got ballast. P1 gets 80 kilos, P2 60, and so it goes down to P5 30 kilos. I'm happy about that, Marius. What are your thoughts?
I think it's really cool because if you look at the way the Intercontinental GT Challenge works, I mean, their onboard computers in the car, they literally have their balance of performance. So the guy literally in race control can just go poof, log in, and that's what your car's going to operate at, and it sets it and makes it even. But most racing these days come in, especially like British touring car days, like you mentioned, all of them work with success ballast. And I think it just ends up keeping it very, very fair from a racing perspective, because we saw a couple of guys last year run away with it early on, and it just becomes really difficult to catch them. Now it's something the guys need to sit and really consider. When you chat to someone like Daniel Rowe, he'll talk to you about the difference that makes in terms of how the car handles when you carry that ballast with you from race to race. So I think these sort of rules that are being implemented are real race scenario setups that are being brought through to the sim racing, and I think that for me is awesome, and it's just something else for the guys to consider. It's not here I am just flipping playing a game. You're not. This is racing for real.
I absolutely love success ballast, and I mean, I felt what a car feels like with 20 kilos and 40 kilos of ballast, and there is a difference.
I'd love to know though, I mean, in our days of racing, I know we're going to head into the qualifying now, but in our days of racing, we used to look at, well, where do you put that weight? So obviously you want to put that weight, like, we sit on the right hand side of the car, so we would obviously put the weight on the left. So it's kind of like simulating a driver, but some guys would put the weight in the back or put the weight in the front. So that for me is quite interesting to see where the game puts the weight, I mean, how it interprets that weight, because it makes a massive difference. You want to kind of keep the car balanced.
These guys are definitely going to feel it. And you know what? They're going to feel it now as qualifying is about to start. These guys are going to be feeling it all over qualifying as we head onto the circuit. We've got some on-track visuals there for you guys, as you guys can see. On board now with Jason Webb, number 45. I spoke to him this morning, and he's changed from last year. From the Mercedes, our feature car this year, to the Nissan GT-R, which he says he enjoys driving the car. The car slides around, moves around a little bit, still getting dialed in. But he did say he enjoys this car, and this is what we're going to see this year. We're going to see a whole bunch of new cars coming to the front, bubbling to the surface. I'm excited. We've got some Hondas here as well. Honda NSX, we hardly saw that last year. Some of the guys changed over to the Aston Martin. We've got a whole bunch more Bentley Continentals. The game has shuffled things up quite a bit, and we're looking at that shuffled deck today.
Well, that's what I'm quite interested to see, because obviously we've got two groups here. So I haven't looked at what the lineup is for our second qualifying session. But if you look at that on the board now, where are the Porsches? You know what I mean? It's like one. Whereas last year, Porsche was the car. So I'm assuming, honestly, you'll know a lot better because, you live in this game. I'm assuming there have been some changes by Assetto Corsa in terms of balance of performance with the cars, and the Porsche is no longer the dominant one. Because if I look through our lineup now, I mean, most of the guys have made a change. Hardly any of the guys have stuck. We see Jason Isherwood, I think he's made a change now as well, having a look at the car that he's in. Bash is in a Merc. You know, it's just like, huh?
I never thought
Everyone's changed.
I never thought I'd see the day that I'd see Bash in a work. But
Yeah,
having
so,
said, he is one of the ATK Works drivers, so to speak. So he's in that flagship
yeah,
Mercedes-Benz. You'll see the ATK guys in the Mercedes-Benz. But the nice thing is that this year, the Mercedes-Benz is very potent this year. Assetto Corsa have made a couple of changes. Not only have they changed to some of the Evo models, so the year models are bumped up by a year
our
or
current,
two.
yeah.
Yeah. But also, as per normal, certain cars perform better at certain circuits. And in this case today, the Porsche, we know that has always been historically fast, historically quick, and just historically the best, to be honest.
Yeah.
Benjamin Lodier is the only person that I see here with a Porsche today.
Well, look, I mean, if you remember us last year, we were raving about how well Bruno did. He was obviously dominant in a car that really wasn't the pick, which was the Merc last year. And you still look at his good results. So it was quite interesting for me to see that he's now obviously gone and jumped ship and gone into the McLaren, which we saw had pace last year. But it seems like now would have been the perfect time to have stuck with the Merc, with Merc as a sponsor, coming on board in the game, obviously gearing up to assist Merc from a better balance of performance throughout all the tracks. So yeah, big shuffle, and that for me is crucial because this mustn't become a one make race series, and I think Assetto Corsa is aware of that, and that's why we've got a lineup like this. But having a look there, I mean, right up at the top straight away is Daniel Rowe. He's dropped down to second now, so a man with massive real racing experience, and in a Bentley. So he's one of his good mates. Obviously, Jordan Pepper used to race with Bentley until Bentley ended their manufacturer program at Kyalami 9 Hour at the end of last year. So Jordan now, I don't know if you picked up racing in America,
and
actually
winning.
got with K-Pax, they got a double win. So great start for him in his new team, racing in the Lamborghinis now. So it looks like not only in the Assetto Corsa, but in the real world, there's a lot of driver changes as well.
Yeah, Morgan McCall giving what looks like staying here a bit of a hard time. Morgan McCall also in the Mercedes-Benz, currently in 7th position, going to the corkscrew now. 2 different lines getting taken through. You got to watch out not to touch that inside too much. You get upset like that as they go through the left-hander. Now you don't want to run completely wide. You tuck it in nice and tight. The car on the right-hand side runs wide, and Morgan McCall goes through. I don't think that affected him too much. But he's going to make his way across the lines.
Yeah, it's quite a tricky corner because you get sucked into that left-hander and you can get. Surprisingly, like I said to you, it's not a track that the drivers actually love, and I think that might purely be from a racing perspective and also in terms of really challenging corners. And I don't think they find these corners like super committed like you're going to get at Spa and those type of places.
Yeah, we're on board with Lodger now, Benjamin Lodger, and 122.8. I heard that low 22s were good, but some of the guys are now doing 21s. And it looks like low 21s might be the pace here. Benjamin Lodger at 1/10 of a second or so up at the moment in the Porsche, the lone Porsche on the circuit as he threads his way under the Cooper tires.
I never thought I'd say that. Yeah, you say the lone Porsche on the circuit. It is just bizarre. But I mean, that for us is what is going to make this a very, very interesting season. I mean, like we said right in the beginning, it's just super exciting to see some really big names in terms of brands supporting the Pro Series. Fantastic to have Mercedes-Benz as a title sponsor. And you start realizing this is what's been happening internationally. And it's good that South Africa is not being left behind in terms of that. And that, the big prize here is obviously to go and represent South Africa as the fastest sim racer at the World Games. So that for me is just, I mean, this is legitimate now. So I'm expecting to see a lot of guys taking a lot more time off work and making this a proper career, because that's where we're at the moment.
Well, speaking of someone that's doing this as a career, Elric Enslen, according to his bio, works full-time for Coach Dave Academy. So
Yeah.
we got some legit pro sim races here, but let's not forget one of our top sim races from last year. And I mean, we've got Bashir Jadwar, of course, now sponsored by ATK again this year, currently in 4th position. We've got, I'm telling you, these guys are so legit, and I'm excited to see them all in the same location. I'm really hyped up because we are going to figure out now who is the best in sim racing.
Well, look, I mean, what I'm looking forward to is I should probably get onto the Discord chat and have a catch up with a couple of the drivers, just to kind of understand what was their motivation for changing, because you feel like you're in the rhythm. I know we're going to new circuits. Kyalami is kind of the only track that's a repeat, so maybe that's also a lot to do with why there's been a change. Because for me, if you were kind of running very similar circuits to last year, I would kind of stick with the car if it was a successful car for me, because you know it, and you know how tricky getting the car set up. And I mean, that's why, Dave Perrell with Coach Dave Academy, I mean, that's become a business now where he actually shares the setup with people.
Yes.
Because literally, if you don't have your car set up right, you don't stand a chance.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
is how competitive it's got.
Well, a name that I don't see on this list here is Jordan Sherritt. He's supposed to be in Division 1 qualifying, and I don't see him on the list here.
I did see a Sherritt earlier, and he's changed car as well. I think he's gone into something different. I picked up on that earlier. He's not in the Audi that he was last year, but I think he's
in the Merc as well. He's in the Mercedes, sponsored by ATK. One of ATK's works drivers, as I say, and also speaking of Mercedes-Benz. I was spending some time with the Merc team this week. And I mean, I'm sure you know them, Lebo and Johannes and all the Mercedes brass. And it was, as someone that's part of motoring media in this country, I deal with a lot of manufacturers, and I'm sure so do you. And it's very interesting. Our industry is in some ways stuck in some of the old way of doing things, print media, etc. But the fact that Mercedes-Benz has jumped onto this, I just want to reiterate how big of a deal that is. Yeah. That's huge. And the fact that they're so excited about this as well. I spoke to Lebo and, as I said, Johannes, and they are very excited to be part of the ATK Pro Series. And it's for me, it's very exciting news, because I think this is the beginning of big things over the next couple of years.
Look, it's very clever marketing, because, at the end of the day, a lot of the guys that are committed to this level of racing, they're not kids. I know we speak about Junior McCall. Yeah, there are some youngsters, but most of these guys are professional guys. So you're talking to people that can actually afford the product. But for me, what's also crucial, it's about brand positioning. And I think it really gives them a lot of bums in seat experience in a virtual way, which I'm glad that a manufacturer is looking at it in that way, and not sticking with the traditional way of approaching, how do I get my brand out there? How do I engage with people? This is the in platform at the moment. So I think well done to them for actually being sharp enough to take this opportunity and run with it. And now, I mean, sure, we know a lot of the ATK drivers obviously will be driving in the Mercs, but you're going to find a lot of other guys will be racing in that car as well. So suddenly, we are streaming, talking about Merc, not because it's a sponsor, but because the cars are running well. So it's very strategic and good positioning as well. One thing I have picked up on as well, just having a look here, we spoke about Porsche, but I haven't seen one Audi in the lineup. And last year, the Audi was also a very, very consistent performer, a good, balanced, all-round car. So bizarre that I haven't seen one Audi in the lineup at all. I don't know if you've got any insight on that.
I'm looking at the list here. And absolutely no Audis on both sides of the sheet here in Division 1 or Division 2. So, as you say, very bizarre. We've now got eyes on Jordan Sherritt. He came out the pits and, in characteristic form, kind of set things out, watched how things unfolded. And now in 26th position, but I don't think he's going to stay there for very long. Goes around turn 1 there, gets that double apex, and now puts the hammer down.
Yeah, listen, he did that a lot. Remember, in the actual qualifying runs for races, he would kind of come out, set up a lap, and then chill, make a cup of coffee, and then he used to
Yeah.
come out with like 2 or 3 minutes to go and just put in a cracker lap. So I think it's kind of that sort of strategy now as well. The guys know the circuit; they've probably been doing plenty of laps around Laguna Seca, but this is a crucial qualifying session because, like you rightly said, when the first race comes up later this month, that's going to determine who is going to find themselves in the pro category and who's going to be in pro am. So you always want to start your season in the right category. So today's run is crucial.
Absolutely crucial. We've got another Mercedes there making its way through. That's Sherrod, the outside view of Sherrod's car over there. And these new screens, I'm a little excited here about so many things. And the screen, I mean, just look at, we've got split screens happening here. We've got new graphics. We've got Mercedes-Benz logo. We've got the Kyalami 9 hour MSA logo. A big step in the right direction for the ATK Pro Series this year.
Well, listen, that's what was cool when I arrived here, because first time at the arena and good to actually meet Dan, the director, face to face as opposed to virtually. But so flipping cool to actually look at the technical setup because it feels like a proper TV studio in terms of the way they've got it geared up production wise, and that's why what you're seeing here, we mentioned it so many times last year. Like if you walk into your lounge and you saw this, you'd think it's racing for real. It's that level.
Yeah, it certainly is that level. As we look at one of the cars that's kind of new to the ATK Pro Series, we got Straydom over there in the Honda, and Straydom also a new name on the grid in the Honda NSX, currently in 4th position, just 7/10 of a second down. Jordan Sherrod in pole position with a 20.9. He's done it
quick.
That is so second faster than Alaric Enzlin and separating himself from the pack in a big way.
Listen, this Honda, just to go back to the Honda, I mean, if you go back to Kyalami 9 hour end of last year, gutted. I spent a lot of time with the Honda team at the event, and they were just so giving of their time, and they like welcomed us in, and we were hung out with the guys, and they were absolutely gutted because they did not lose the Kyalami 9 hour. They were basically robbed of it just with terrible weather again playing its part. But that Honda was so fast. It's one of my favorite cars from a looks perspective, but it is super quick. And what was difficult for them in the Intercontinental GT Challenge is that there are not a lot of Hondas running, so they can't help each other. There might be one racing in Japan and one in America. Like there were lots of Audis, there were lots of Mercs, so the guys can share knowledge, they can work on setup together, and that's what made it so difficult for them as basically one car running in the series. So for them to have had that pace, you realize just how good the car was. So nice to see a couple of NSXs running here, and like you said, Sean Straydom, new name. A logistical nightmare is what his team is called by the looks of things, but very stoked with his 4th position at this stage. But we still got like 13 minutes to go, and a lot can happen. But I think what we're seeing at the moment are the top guys. I don't think anybody's not gone out and tried to put a quick lap together. So I think what we're seeing here is pretty much how it's going to run for the last 12 minutes.
Yeah, Morgan McCall on screen at the moment. And just getting back to that NSX topic earlier on, is that you're right. The same thing applies. Yeah, he's one of the few guys with an NSX. And if you've got the ability to share knowledge, it makes setting up the car so much easier. If you've got a problem with the car, you can speak to one of the other guys, speak to your teammates, or maybe running the same car and go, why is this happening on this corner? And get to the problem, solve that problem a lot quicker. So he's got the same issue that the NSX guys at Kyalami 9 now have.
Well, look, I mean, I suppose as well on the forums, there's a massive community. I mean, that's what Dave Perrell does and a lot of other guys. So, I haven't been into the community to see how the NSX fares from a Assetto Corsa perspective, and whether there must be guys that can help in terms of getting the car set up. But I found what worked for us last year. We saw a couple of guys that were teaming up. You got so many, like obviously ATK, you got White Rabbit Gaming, so those guys would run the same car. They'd work together, even though they're racing against each other, but they're sharing knowledge in terms of setup, and that makes a massive difference. Jason Webb, it doesn't matter what car he's in, Merc last year, GTR this year, he's always going to go sideways. I think that's the only way he knows how to drive it. But again, what a cool car to see racing again. It wasn't at Kyalami 9 hour at the end of last year, but the year before it was, and it's a real favorite with the spectators. There's something iconic about a Nissan GTR, so great to see it racing this year with a real talented driver in Jason Webb.
Yeah, as you say, he's so talented. He jumps and skips right over. The commentator's curse is
Yeah.
always at play, folks. So
Oh
yeah,
man.
we've got to try and sometimes we just say things and it just happens at the same time. You know, that's not our
Yeah.
fault. What are we supposed to do? We're here
We
to
don't
talk.
have we don't have the power. I promise you. Imagine.
It feels like it sometimes. I'm not gonna lie. That
Yeah.
was Jason Webb there through the corkscrew, and that GTR is an impressive looking car. I really enjoy that car, Godzilla. They call it a performer in motorsport since the early days. And now it's nice to see a GTR in the top 10. He's moved down now to 8th position, just behind close friend of his, Bashir Jadwat, who races for ATK. Of course, Jason with Team Milk, E-Juice, and a couple of milk cars out on circuit at the moment today. Ian as well, a familiar name from last year, also out in the milk car. That's Ian McKenzie.
That was the pink car, wasn't it, last year? Didn't we have a pink milk? Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
I prefer chocolate milk.
Jason Isherwood now on circuit. Jason Isherwood, a former Bentley driver, if I'm not mistaken. Now,
yeah, he was.
From the UK-based manufacturer, driving an Aston Martin.
Look, I mean, the Aston Martin, if you remember last year, it was also a car that everyone said was actually a really easy car to get your head around. It was a really good car to drive. It behaved quite consistently. So it's not surprising we're seeing more and more of the Astons appearing on the grid this year, because I think there's some real pace there. I think the only issue with it was straight line speed, but you probably find that that's obviously been affected and improved on with the in-game changes to the regulations and how the cars run. So very, very cool car. Jason as well. Remember last year he started really, really well and then kind of disappeared a little bit later on in the season. And I think it is very difficult to commit to 12 rounds. So I really do like the way we've done it this year. I think 6 rounds, the guys can really put their all into it. And come end of July, we know who the best sim racer is in South Africa. So I think a lot of learnings from last year. 12 rounds, awesome. But it was long, and I think for the guys to commit to that also becomes quite difficult. So I think we're going to get the very, very best out of all of our sim races for the next 3 months. It's going to be a cracker.
And certainly that's the thing about the ATK Pro Series, and you know, whether I'm with the team or not, anything that I work with, I'm always Jason Isherwood there loses a little bit, but don't worry, he'll jump to the pits. I know Marius is not going to be too happy about that, but I think but the thing about the series and anything that I do, I try and make sure there's always improvement in the things I do and in the teams that I'm in. And one of the things that I'm really proud of is the fact that the ATK Pro Series is always evolving. We're always looking inward to figure out how we can make this thing better. And clear this year, it's a better recipe this year.
Yeah, listen, I mean, that's, for me as a complete outsider, getting involved in that for the first time last year, it was proper eyes wide open for me because, you know, I'm not part of the gaming world in any way. And just to have been part of that experience was like, this is legitimate, this is amazing. And talent, you know, you watch the racing and it's exciting and the guys are really, really good at it. But the production has to back it up. You know, you've got to have this polished product. So it really is lucky for us to be involved in something like this because, you know, whether I'm doing the Kyalami 9 Hour live on television, you know, for Kyalami 9 Hour owners, or I'm doing this, for me it feels the same. You know, it doesn't feel like, oh, this is Mickey Mouse. This is legitimate. So I think it's well done to all the guys at ATK together. It's brilliant.
That is really incredible to hear. Speaking of incredible, someone that's doing really well in the Thrustmaster Coach Dave Academy car as he comes into view there. That is Alaric Ensland, still 0.5 of a second of our pit lane man, Jordan Sherritt. In the other Mercedes-Benz, we've got 2 Mercedes up front with Straydom, the new guy currently in third. Just remember, folks, there will be another session after this, and those 2 sessions will be collated to see which of these drivers will be Division 1 and then Division 2 drivers.
Ernest, what I'm finding quite fascinating is it is a massive gap between first and second. Half a second around a short circuit like Laguna Seca is massive. And when you start looking down, I mean, the guys like Sean Mumford down in 21st, I mean, that's over 2 seconds off of the pace. That's big. So I wasn't expecting to see such a big gap at this stage. I thought we'd have a guys running a lot closer. Having spent time at Laguna Seca, I thought we'd have everybody on a very similar pace. But I'm surprised by how spread the field is.
But don't you think also let's look at Sherritt versus Enslin. I think Sherritt might just be one of those guys that we said it last year. Could he be in a league of his own? In the perfect conditions that suit him, is he in a league of his own? We don't know what's going to happen at the next circuit, but we've seen certain levels of domination from him. Further back, but from second to sixth or seventh, you've got about another half a second in it. And then further back down to 18th position, 20th position, let's say 18th, you've got a 2-second gap in total. So it's slightly spread out, but I think Jordan Sherritt is making up a large chunk of that spread.
Yeah, but it's still, I mean, I look at guys like Ecoat, Jason Gray. I mean, these were guys that were kind of 15, 16 in the pro category throughout most of the season last year. So it's just radical to see them 2 seconds off the pace at this stage. But again, new cars, you know, they're not racing in what they were racing in last year. So maybe it takes some getting used to. But these guys haven't just arrived yet today and said, okay, let's figure out how this car goes. They've already done lots of laps around Laguna Seca because they know how important the qualifying is. Aldo Bellingham from my hometown, he hasn't changed. He ran in the Lambo last year, such a cracker looking car. So good to see him sticking with the car. And he had some good pace, just obviously struggled a bit with consistency, I think, from round to round, but looking pretty good with unlucky 13 at this point with 5 minutes to go. So he'll feel like hopefully he's done enough here. But I think, you know, the guys are going to want to be top 10 to know that they're secure because we've got another qualifying session coming. So you don't want to be sitting down in 21st position now because you're probably not going to make it.
Yeah, that is very true. We're going to collate the two divisions and then figure out who goes to pro. Although Bellingham looking good there in 13th position, but he might want to pick up the pace a little bit, try and maybe get into that top 10. Bruno Cadile currently in 11th position in the McLaren, and just in front of him, another new name, Tariq Adam, also in the McLaren. But what's interesting about Cadile is that he switched from the Mercedes to the McLaren. Now, what difference has that made? I mean, I'd like to speak to him and find out, because we know for sure he would not necessarily be this far down the grid in the first 30 drivers into South Africa.
Well, look, we spoke about that right at the beginning of the broadcast. You know, he was a standout performer in a car that wasn't that quick. Last year, if you remember, he was just really wringing its neck and getting superb results considering. So that's why I found it quite radical that now, you know, as Mercedes-Benz as a title sponsor, I thought he would have kind of stayed in the car. But you know, again, these are things that we need to chat to the guys. I caught up with him last year at the Kyalami 9. It was nice to see so many of the guys that were literally just names to me, and it was so great to be able to put some faces to the names. So that was really, really cool. But I really do. I want to find out from the guys. I think it would be nice throughout the season to find out what led them to changing and shifting to different cars. I know they also we heard earlier, I think Jonathan can clarify that for us as well, that there were a couple of drivers that aren't able to make today's qualifying runs, but they did put in some times yesterday. So there are a couple of additional names we won't see today that could still be there when we get to our first race in the Pro Division because of times that they posted yesterday.
Yeah, I've got those names here. We've got Kieran Patterson, Charles Wilkin. Charles Wilkin, of course, one of our resident bad boys.
Is he allowed?
Yeah, he's here to shake things up, eh? He is here to shake things up.
I hope he said sorry.
You know that, gets a Lamborghini gets a bit sideways there. I'm as someone that's a fan of the sport, I love a little bit of having a little bit of heroes, a little bit of villains here and there. And if the Oaks are scared of Charles Wilkin on track, I'm okay with that. It's last season. I've forgiven him. And whatever, for those of you guys that don't know, Charles Wilkin had a bit of a tussle with someone last season and got a penalty
at Suzuka. Basically punted a car into the wall.
I'm trying to be nice here, but yeah, that's what happened. And you know, I'm okay if the Oaks are thinking, hey, this guy's going to punt me off at any second. Whether he does or not is not the issue. The threat of the punt is now there, and that changes the dynamic a little bit, which I think is quite exciting for us as people that are watching.
But what is really cool as well, if you remember, and this is crucial, is that with Motorsport South Africa involved, you know, we were having our incident reports every Monday, and this whole circuit of the racing and the way the thing works is actually done according to correct motor racing regulations and rules. So we had, officials that would sit and have a look at the incidents, and penalties would be issued accordingly. So yeah, you're right. I mean, I shouldn't make a joke about what happened last year, but I mean, that is racing, and it's really. Yeah, it's just really cool that the guys realize that if you're going to do that, there are penalties, and we're trying to make the series run like the real deal professional racing series that it is. So nice little spin in the NSX there. So that for me is crucial, that the guys realize that none of that sort of nonsense exists. You can't just hit eject and you're out of here. This is the real deal.
This is the real deal. And speaking of real deal, we've now got 1 minute and 15 seconds of the real deal available in qualifying. We get down to the last 1 minute. Jordan Shedden on board with him now, 4/10 of a second ahead of Elric Ensland, who I don't think is going to be able to do much now, as he's still currently in the pit lane. Tradom, the big winner here for me so far, in third position in the Honda. Daniel Rowe in fourth position in the Bentley, with Bashir Jadwat, someone I thought we might be further up the grid, in fifth. Morgan McCall, very well done to him so far, in sixth position. And Lewis, also another new name as far as I'm concerned, in
yeah, I don't remember Brian, so that's also nice to see some new people. I don't remember him from last year at all. But I saw Ensland's time did get a little bit quicker. He found another 10th. But I don't think anybody will be able to touch Jordan. Amazing time that he's gone and posted. And Marcus Staining, if I remember correctly, was racing in a Ferrari last year. He's in the Bentley. So yeah, same names, different cars. Sure, a couple of new guys really looking impressive. So Sean Stradham, well done. So I think that's a cracker time. Welcome to the ATK Pro Series, bud, for 2021, because that's a good start.
Yeah, welcome to the Pro Series. He's basically kicked the door down, didn't he? In third position, currently sitting in the pits. We are on board now with Lewis in seventh place. Well done to him. Jason Webb just behind him. Tariq Adam, also another new name in the McLaren, making his way into the top 10. And I think as some of the newer guys like Brian Lewis over here, they want to make an impression. And certainly he has made that impression as we go through the last corner with Brian Lewis. No changes so far for anybody. Let's see if Brian can get further up the grid. Currently in seventh position. He stays there, stays in seventh position. 0.3 of a second down on his fastest time that last session, that last lap over there. Marcus Stain currently in 10th position. Wow, what a shake-up we've seen here today. But unsurprisingly, Jordan Shedden on the top spot. But for me, there are a couple of big winners here, and certainly the two new guys, Ensland in second and another new guy in third position. Just wow. Now looking at Ian McKenzie over there in the McLaren in 28th at the moment, going across the line. Can he beat that time? Maybe make his way further up. Stays in 28th. Qualifying is over, folks. And that's it. We're going to go to an ad break now, and we'll be back shortly. Well, we are back after Division 1 qualifying. We wait for those results to come up. But wow, what a start to the ATK Pro Series, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz South Africa. What a start. It's, where do we start? Let's talk about Elric Ensland in second position there. The new guy, we've heard rumors about this guy last year of how quick his pace was. He didn't take part last year, but just wow, unbelievable to see him in second place. I know that Jordan, we'll get to Jordan in a second, but Alrik Enselen, just a fantastic performance in second place.
But I think if I remember, he did race 1 or 2 races last year.
I think it was the first.
Yeah. So we know of him, but like you said, working with Coach Dave and the academy, so really showing good pace. But what was exciting, and you and I mentioned it, a lot of the usual suspects, just obviously racing in different cars, but a couple of new names. I want to talk about Sean Stratham too, because we never heard of him before in a Honda. That NSX looked really fast with him behind the wheel, and I think he finished up in 3rd or 4th, which is fantastic. And this is not a race today, it's a seeding run, and you certainly do want to make your name known, so the guys go, you got a target on your back, which is exactly what you want in racing. There's hardly ever going to be a case where a guy just sneaks in and suddenly, where did he come from? You want to set the target quite early, and then you want to have that good consistency going into the first race, which is in a couple of weeks time. So good start, nice new guys, great new sponsor on board, and the show is going to be good this year.
Well, before we get to Jordan Sheridan, I'm having a look at the comments over here. The guys, the Carbon Brew says, nice lap. Jordan, epic lap time. Robert McCall, that's the father of the McCall brothers, says, well done, gents. Jordan Sheridan somehow finds time to type in the comment section as well. And while he's typing, crosses the line in first position to take our first place in Division 1. Half a second, 4/10 of a second ahead of second place. Do you think anybody's going to be able to beat him in Division 2?
It's going to be tricky because I haven't seen the driver lineup, but for me, he literally was, him and Zayaressa were the real standouts in terms of out and out pace. We know Bashir Jadwat was really strong last year as well. Bruno Kadile, really good performer. We've seen both of them in this first qualifying run, so I think it's a really good time. You were talking about the guys talking about a 22 being a good lap time there, and he's gone and put it into a high 20. So I think that is the benchmark time, and the guys getting ready for the next qualifying run will know, oh my word, that can be a proper dent to your ego when you've been clocking 21s. You think this is it, and before you get to qualifying, some guy goes and puts in a 20.8. So it's a cracker lap time.
Absolutely. I mean, we've all been there. You think you're the quickest guy on the day, and then all of a sudden somebody knocks a second off the time, and you have no idea where to find that second. It's absolutely demoralizing. And specifically if the guys have been working on the circuit all week trying to find that time, thinking that they've got a solid time, and then someone like Jordan comes along, takes another half a second out of it. Having said that, I do think that some of the guys are not as used to some of their cars as they would have been later on in the season. And also, I can speak from personal experience here, is that after the Pro Series was pretty intense last season.
Yeah.
So I took a bit of a sabbatical from plowing around some of the laps, some of the circuits. And I know that a lot of the drivers have also kind of taken a step back, taken a breather, and then quite recently hopped back into their cars. So I think there are going to be a few guys that are just not as sharp as they would have been last year. But again, someone that certainly is as sharp as he was last year is Jordan Sheridan.
Ernest, it's a very good point that you raised. And I think, we mentioned it earlier, there was a lot of sim racing last year, because I mean literally, and I mean it, because I think a lot of people that might have been new to the whole world of sim racing with COVID doing what it did, and then obviously no real racing, everybody flocked to sim racing. So it certainly elevated it, and it gave everybody, okay, this is the real deal, this is what this thing's about. But I think the guys were tired at the end of last year, and it was a long season, not just for ATK with the Pro Series having 12 rounds. So you're right, I think you're going to find the guys will start warming up, stretching, getting ready for a proper race season. The fact that we've condensed into 6 rounds, I think, is brilliant. So I still do think what you're seeing here now is legitimate. I mean, here's our top 30 in that session, and Jordan, I mean, that's a cracker time. That's like 400s quicker than Krobler in second. So
Krobler got second in the end there.
Yeah, that's a surprise.
That is unbelievable stuff. He is.
But I'm trying to see. Hang on, but where did our Honda NSX go? Because he was up there. Where did Sean go? So there's a bit of we'll try and find out what happened there, because I know Sean in the Honda NSX was up in, I think, second or third position.
Third position. Alrik was in second, and He was in third, but Daniel Rowe, also another new name here in the 21s. So let's look at who's in the 21s. We've got JC Krobler, newish guy. Elric Enslin, new guy. Daniel Rowe, new guy. Bashir Jadwat, Morgan McCall. Morgan, of course, in contention for the championship, third position in the championship last year, in 6th place at the moment. Arno Fasahi doing really well. Arno Fasahi, Brian Lewis, another new name. Jason Webb makes the top 10 with Marcus Steyn in 9th. Tariq Adam, again, new to the series, in 11th. Chris Heineke in 12th. Bruno Kadile in 13th position. But Aldo Bellingham, I think he's going to be quite happy with that 14th position spot there, climbing his way up. Benjamin Lodger, I would have hoped he would have done a little bit better than that, to be honest. Noor Hendricks, our ex-Ferrari man, no longer Ferrari man. He was our stalwart Ferrari guy last year. Even though I do think the Ferraris are quite quick. They've got the Evo model available now for the guys. So, but look, this isn't the final sheet yet, because we still need to collate both sheets. And I think this is the first time our guys are putting something like this together. So they're going to go over this again while we do the Division 2 qualifying, and obviously put everybody's results together. And then we'll get the final results to see who makes it into Pro.
Yeah, just to jump in there, we've got clarity. I mean, that's why I was wondering what happened to Sean Stratham, because we were raving about him. So that's actually his time. The 121.249, I think, is actually his, because I think JC Krobler's in the next seeding run. So if you are confused, we were for a moment. So just bear with us, a couple of little technical gremlins. But yeah, Sean, we were raving about how good he was as a newcomer to the series. He hasn't now disappeared from the series. That is his time up there, or should be in 2nd position anyway. So yeah, brilliant result. But like you said, a lot of guys that we saw, Etienne Kleb, Jason Gray, Sean Mumford, Clint Rendell, guys that all raced last year, maybe expecting a little bit more from them. But this is the tricky bit, because I think, wow, if you're not in the top 15 here, it's going to be very difficult for you, I think, to make it into the Pro division. But then again, I don't know how the seeding has been done. So who's gone into Division 1 and who's gone into Division 2, because you might end up having a very, very slow qualifying round coming up, and all of these guys could be our pros. You know what I mean? So that's what I love about this.
Well, looking at Division 2 sheets, I'll tell you whose name stands out for me. Yeah, we got Charles Wilkin, who's always been relatively quick, although he did qualify yesterday, so he won't be there today. Jason Abschmeyer, of course, also relatively fast in the Mercedes White Rabbit Gaming this year. Junior McCall should be quite good. Kieran Patterson, constantly improving last year. We saw that. Quade Claasen's another quick driver for ATK. And, of course, a fan favorite there, Wesley Hampson. Sticking to the Lexus this year is Wesley. So let's see how Weather SA does in that Lexus. So I do think that the fastest guys were in Division 1, but there are some guys that might upset the apple cart a little bit in Division 2.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting, because like we said, there were a couple of guys that put times in yesterday because they couldn't obviously make the qualifying run today. So that's all going to get filtered in as well. So it's going to be quite interesting to see who the final pro drivers are. But of course, the same as last year, each race will have qualifying. So the guys will be able to move up into their rightful positions if they have a bad qualifying run today. But like I said to you, you want to start the first race of the season in the Pro Division. That's where you want to be. Yeah. So today's qualifying certainly is critical. And Laguna Seca, like I said to you, a track that everyone knows, obviously, but it's not a race favorite, both in the gaming world and in the real world. So the drivers aren't really a big fan of it. So quite interesting that we've chosen it as a qualifying run, because I think it really is possibly a track that the guys don't spend a lot of time on, and that might also come through in terms of the timing that we're seeing.
Yeah, definitely not a circuit that a lot of guys spend that much time on. One of the things that we do know as far as time goes is that qualifying starts in about 8 minutes time. So the next qualifying session starts in 8 minutes time. And these guys, if you don't make it into the Pro, the nice thing about the way we've done it this year is that you can jump your way back into the Pro division depending on your results, and you can also fall out of the Pro division depending on your results. So the guys are going to be having everything to play for every single time. And I think with the new rule set, sandbagging is going to be a little bit more difficult this year. The guys are going to have to race to their full potential this year, which is what we want. We want these guys to be pushing hard.
I think we lost Ernest there. Yeah, what Ernest was saying, obviously, I mean, last year it worked really well, having the qualifyings like we did it. This obviously is very, very new, that we're having a qualifying or seeding day, preempting the first race to kind of figure out who's who in the zoo and who are going to be our pros and who are going to be our pro-am guys at the start of the season. But that's not where it is for the rest of the season. Every single round is going to be critical that the guys obviously put in good race results. So it's going to be an interesting year. What I'm really looking forward to is that we're going to a couple of different tracks. So our first race is 21st of March at Imola, which is a fantastic circuit. We then go to Spa for round 2 in April. And then for me, 2 great tracks, round 3 and round 5, we're in the UK at Alton Park and Donington. Very technical, challenging tracks, a lot of undulation changes. Round 4 stuck in the middle between the 2 UK rounds is at Mazzano, and then we wrap up round 6 at Kyalami, which is obviously a circuit that we all know well. The Kyalami 9-hour, one of our partners along with Motorsport South Africa. So really, really good that we end our season racing at home as well. So it's going to be a cracker. Something that is also pretty different this year, and I think it's a really smart move as well. We know that there are 2 groups. You're either racing a Assetto Corsa or you're a PlayStation guy. So it's really cool that they've brought PlayStation into the racing this year as well. So we're going to be doing races on Sunday as well as on Mondays. So just so you guys can get your head around it, we'll do our instant reports on Monday, and then straight after that we'll get into the PlayStation rounds. And what is really cool for me with that is each round, everybody races the same car. So depending on the circuit, they're going to be racing a couple of classic cars. There's going to be an F1 car when they get to one of the circuits. And obviously really cool for Mercedes-Benz, who've come on board as our title sponsor. Obviously all the cars in the PlayStation rounds are powered by Mercedes-Benz. So it's going to be really cool for me. And I like that, because then it's not about the car that you chose. It's about everybody, even playing field in that same circuit, same car, same track, same day. There's no mucking around there. I like that format a lot. But we've spoken a lot, Ernest, about all the name changes and the car changes. So here we go. This is our corrected, updated qualifying results. So Dan, thanks for getting that sorted. So Elric Ensign, like you were talking, Ernest, great time. Literally four tenths off of Jordan Sherritt's time there, and Sean Stratton, the new guy in that Honda NSX, a 121.6. So some really, really good new name performances as well. I think the guys sitting in the top 15 will probably feel quite comfortable at this stage, and that's Noah Hendricks. I think also good result there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in qualifying 2 as we start looking to the first race of the season.
Yeah, qualifying 2 starts in about 4 minutes time, and I'm going through the Division 2 list here. 2 things stand out. One is that so many guys have changed cars. We've got Byron Walker now in the 720S. He was in the Ferrari last year. Sean Walker in the Porsche last year is now in the Bentley. Corne Strauss in the McLaren last year, now in the Mercedes. And the list goes on and on. Jason Abshue in the Porsche last year, now in the Merc as well. And then the second thing that stands out is you've got so many new guys here. Andre Serradio, you've got Byron Kutzer, you've got Christian Deploy, Doug Herbert, Dwayne Hall, Flip Van Zyl. These are all guys that they might be big on the sim scene in other series, but I certainly haven't heard about these guys, not in the pro series. So they, just like Elric Enslin, just like Sean Stratton and Daniel Rowe, are here to cement their place as one of the top sim racers in the country. And so far, so good for these guys in the top 4. It's just amazing to see some new names come through.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, because I look at this and like we spoke about Daniel, legitimate, brilliant racing driver, obviously Volkswagen Motorsport Works driver. So I look at him and I go, why have you chosen the Bentley? Because I find it quite interesting, because when you chat to Jordan and the guys that were racing for Bentley, they would say what a difficult car it was to get set up perfectly. The operating window was so narrow, so it wasn't the easiest car to really maximize performance out of. But obviously in the game, in Assetto Corsa, things are very, very different. And while you were chatting now, I sent Jason Abshmeyer a message saying, help me out here, dude. What's happened? Why no more dominant Porsche? And he just said to me, listen, balance of performance has changed things big time in Assetto Corsa. There is no more dominant Porsche. And he just said to me, no, that's why he's chosen to go Merc. He said, because it's fast. And he just says, like a lot of the circuits, again, we spoke about the strategy involved in looking at the circuits. We're going to new circuits compared to last year. And he was just saying to me, circuits like Imola, where you want to hit the curb, quite difficult to get your setup right in a rear-engined car, that it's stable when you are taking on the curb. So that was his motivation for making the change. So yeah, it's just really exciting for us, because last year it was pretty much the Porsche show, and someone like Bruno, who was in the Merc, was like, wow, dude, you've done well in a car that wasn't that great. Now it seems like Merc is one of the consistent cars. And I mentioned earlier, I haven't seen one Audi. Crazy.
Yeah,
Audi again was such a good, consistent car from circuit to circuit. So Assetto Corsa really has changed things up big time. And I know once we get this qualifying underway, we can chat a little bit further with Jonathan, who obviously can give us some technical insight into that. But I think it's quite fascinating. It's nice to see different manufacturers coming to the fore, and just chatting to a guy like Jason, trying to understand why they've made that change. And I'll message Daniel now as well, and just find out from him why the Bentley became his choice. So yeah, it's going to be a good season, because we've got some big names. We've got names that were crackers in the sim racing, and now we've got the real racing stars coming to the party as well. So it's going to be good.
Well, someone that certainly is also a real racing star, Jordan Sherritt. He raced Formula cars over in the US of A. Going through the comments here in the YouTube chat stream, and he says the Bentley has gotten a lot better actually recently. And then to that, TK Raptor responds, still a bit slow if you're not an alien. So I think he's inferring to the fact that some of these guys are legitimately quick sim racers, world class, if you will. And I mean, to get to the top spot like that, Jordan Sherritt certainly does cement himself as one of the world-class drivers. And speaking of world-class events, our world-class event is about to start in the next couple of minutes. We got 63 people watching on the stream, a solid stream count, if you ask me. And all of us waiting with bated breath for Division 2 qualifying.
Yeah, I'm quite keen. I want to go racing, because for me it feels kind of weird to like watch qualifying and then you don't get to race. We're not going racing tomorrow. That's like, and I think for the drivers as well, this is kind of like right, let's stretch our legs. Let's kind of see who's who in the zoo. But I think the real battle is going to be when we get to our first round, because that is now race day. You know, this is kind of still just, I think a lot of the guys will view it as a practice. I do think there's big value in making sure you seed yourself correctly. So you want to be in the pros. So it'll be lucky to cross over to this Division 2 qualifying session now, and just kind of get an idea for what a really good lap time is. I think what Jordan Sherritt did there, breaking into the 20s, is going to be very, very hard to beat. I thought that was a cracker lap time. So let's have a look at qualifying 2.
Here we go. Qualifying 2 is underway. Quade Claessens, early on we mentioned, Marty said he might be one of the guys to watch out for today. And just look at that pit exit over here. Some of the guys were wanting to cheat the pit exit and jump straight onto the main straight there, but that's not the way to do it. You've got to go all the way around. And I was on board early on with some of these guys. It's a very, very tricky pit exit, getting the power down. You know when you come out of a corner and you want to kind of get hasty and put your foot down as early as possible. Tires are cold. You're coming out the pit. You've got a guy on the outside of you on his lap. You want to put your power down. And I think some of the guys are going to get caught out on that pit lane exit. That's for sure.
Look, I mean, it is that type of circuit too, where you do need to be a little bit patient in terms of when you come on the power, because the corners, especially like that turn 2, got a double apex, and you can get sucked into thinking, I can get on the power now. We have a look at the climb up to the corkscrew, and when they come out of basically 8A, which is what he's going into now, and then into turn 9, the left-hand sweep, again, because of the camber, you kind of think, okay, I can get on the power now. And then the circuit actually tightens up on you, and you find yourself actually not on circuit anymore. So it's one of those tracks where you really do need to get your timing right in terms of when you kind of get on the throttle and nail it. But looking at this lineup, Richard van Coller was in the Bentley last year. You were just saying now the Bentley's it looks like it's going to be a good performer this year. So good to see some guys have stuck with the ponies they were in last year. William Hampson as well, you mentioned. He stuck with the Lexus as well, which is really cool. But I've mentioned a couple of the guys that have kind of made the changes. Daniel's just messaged me now, and he says, I love it. He says, I've got to stick with the Volkswagen Group, baby. Bentley's obviously part of the family. He says he really enjoys it, but it is very, very tricky on the Laguna circuit. But he believes there's going to be a lot more to come performance-wise from the Bentley when they get to the other circuits. So, yeah, that's Daniel Rowe kind of hinting at what is to come. So it looks like a Bentley might be a good choice. We know the Mercedes-Benz is a popular choice at the moment, not just with the ATK sponsored team drivers, but with a lot of the other grid as well. A lot of guys have kind of chosen that. But yeah, there it is. Not one Audi in qualifying one or in qualifying two. Unbelievable.
Bernard King on your screen in the left-hand lane, the left-hand side there, that's the Aston Martin. And then Wesley Hampson on your right in the Lexus. Wesley sticking to the Lexus this year, same livery as last year. So one of the few cars that actually looks familiar this year.
I mean, it's so weird because, like, you know, when you commentate and you spend time and you become immersed in this, you start identifying cars and liveries and names, and it's kind of, it all goes together. And you know, in Formula One there might be one or two little shuffles, but like, this has been a big shuffle. It's like everyone is in something different, so it's kind of new for us as well. So maybe not a bad thing having this little qualifying run, so we can get around it, because I think the first race could have been chaos with us trying to figure out who's who in the zoo. So Wesley, thank you very much for keeping the same livery and car. We don't have to concentrate on that one, but it does look super hot, and that Lexus I do like.
Yeah, the Lexus is a fantastic car. I'm not quite sure what the updates have done to the Lexus, but Weza spends a lot of time with that car, with his own series that he runs, you know, the Invitational series he runs immediately after the Pro Series usually. So he spends a lot of time in that car, and I'm sure he's just probably got to the point where, you know what, I'm comfortable with the car, I'm used to this car, and I've tried to learn new cars in this game. It's a process. You've literally got to change your style. It's not easy, because you could end up racing one circuit, but you get to the next circuit and the car feels different again, because on that circuit there's certain types of corners that your old car was really good at. And Junior McCall goes into pole position there with a 21.8.
Brilliant.
1 second down, and we saw early on 1 second separated the top six. So Junior McCall giving his brother a bit of a hard time there. I think it's about the same time as Morgan McCall. And we knew this would happen. We knew that the McCall brothers would start tightening up as they both gained experience, and certainly Junior McCall learning from his brother and his dad and his teammates. Jason Abschmeyer now 0.6 of a second down in 5th position, also in the Mercedes-Benz in the 22.4 or thereabouts. Corne Strauss looking good. Corne Strauss, wow, 6th position. Well done to him so far.
I remember he had some good performances last year in the McLaren. He's obviously jumped across to the Merc as well. Arno Fasaki, if I remember, was in the Audi. He's now jumped into the McLaren. So again, a couple of guys that we saw last year putting in some really good times. Bernard King, if I remember correctly, was in the Lexus last year. He's moved to the Aston Martin, which was a pretty popular car last year as well. So yeah, a lot of move, a lot of changes. Looking at Junior McCall's time, yeah, it's great, but it is a second off of the time that we saw Jordan set in that first qualifying. So yeah, you're starting to realize that was a cracker lap. And I think, looking at the times, I think Division 1 qualifying looked like it was a faster run. I know it's early. I know it's early on here. There was a big shunt from Jason there. I know it looks like it's early. It's 23 minutes to go, but it does look like this Division 2 is running a little bit slower than the times on average that was set in Division 1 qualifying.
Yeah, early on we saw that Mercedes-Benz hit that sausage curve there, and this circuit also has a couple of those big curves where the guys are going to have to avoid those curves but still stay tight, and that's the risk that's the game you play. You try and keep it tight to that curve, but at the same time avoid it, give it a small touch, and we see what the consequences are. On board now with Bernard King in the 222. That is the Aston Martin over there, 1.2 seconds down in 9th position. In front of him is De Kock in the Mercedes-Benz, another new name, Harding, another new name. In this top 10 here, looks like we've got 3 new names in the form of Deploy, De Kock, and Harding. Interesting stuff.
Yeah, and there are a couple of names. I mean, you spoke about Charles Wilkin. There are a couple of guys we're not going to see today. I mentioned it earlier, so if you are new to the stream, a couple of guys couldn't make our qualifying sessions today, but they did post times yesterday. So those times will also filter into the process. So it's going to be a couple of shifting and changing before the end of this qualifying session for sure.
Yeah, qualifying session indeed. What an exciting qualifying session so far. And as you mentioned earlier on, I'm kind of glad we get to practice this a little bit. I'm kind of glad that I just get to stare at these guys' cars for about an hour or two, figure out who's who in the zoo, because this has been a confusing situation, because the entire grid has changed. The entire grid has gone upside down. We're now on board with JC Grobler in the Ferrari. I think he was in a Ferrari last year as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
I
he
wonder if
was. Wasn't he in the pink one last year?
no, that was no, that wasn't Grobler. That was one of the other drivers. That was one of the milk drivers.
Yeah, okay.
In the pink Ferrari, but this one over here could be the Evo version. So I think the Ferrari's still a good car, and I mean we can see that now. He's in second position in this division. Goes through that left-hander up the hill now. Let's see how he does. We're on board with him on both screens, and just look at that bumper cam view. This corner is absolute commitment. You were talking about the cambers earlier on, Marius, and that corner back there is so cambered. Each of these corners has a different type of camber where you've kind of got to manage when you get on the power. If you go through the corkscrew here, you can see you've got to tuck it in there, and as the car dips, get back on the power. Now through the left-hander over here, you don't want to go all the way to the right because there's camber over here. This corner here opens up, and you can actually go faster than you think you can. And then the last corner is where the guys get on the power too much and make the mistake. So it's really a bit of a zigzag seesaw ride where some corners are give, some corners are take, but in the end, it's who crosses the line fastest.
Yeah, listen, it's actually really, really cool. Good insights that you gave there, Ernest, in terms of the technicality of the Laguna Seca circuit. You know, for me, I still think like turn 2 is really tricky with the double apex, and it's probably the only good place for overtaking, and that's why I think this is quite strategic. We're not racing at Laguna Seca because it is a pretty boring track from a racing perspective, very difficult to overtake. So nice that it's ended up being a qualifying run. It's not too long a track. It's a track that the guys probably would know fairly well. So it's good for qualifying. Jason putting in a cracker time there. That's looking a lot better, 121.6. So we're getting... Yeah, so he'll be super stoked with that. We saw him making a big mistake. He said earlier, the setup on the Merc, you can hit the curbs a bit better. It didn't work for him a little bit earlier. But whatever.
One of the Bentleys running wide there.
Yeah, he definitely got it set up nicely after it went to the pits and got repaired, because it's looking a lot quicker, and he'll be happy with that time. Good to have a good banker fairly early on in the session, which is great. Jonathan, if we can bring you in, you've been sitting very, very quietly, I know, getting all the guys into qualifying and making sure everything happens. But you've heard Ernest and I've been kind of chatting now on my phone with a couple of the drivers about why the big changes, and we're not seeing the Porsche dominance. We're not even seeing one Audi at all. I know there's some big changes that a set of course are made in terms of balance of performance. Is the Audi that bad now?
I'm actually not sure. I mean, I don't know why the drivers haven't been preferencing that. But what has happened is, in some DLC that was released last year, you'll see this Merc is the 2020 Evo version of the Merc. So it's the latest technology GT3 car. Then you'll see that the Ferrari 488 Evo also came out, and that is also a 2020 car. So cars like that are being preferenced by the guys simply because they have the latest BOP, and I don't know, it gets adjusted so often that, you know, we've actually included something in this series which nobody's really done before, is that we're giving drivers the opportunity to change car mid-season.
Yeah.
So that if a driver feels that he is being handicapped by his car choice that he's now stuck in for the entire season, he has that opportunity to change that and bring himself back into the battle in the final 3 rounds of the race, of the season. So it's very interesting to see how the BOPs changed year on year. Like the Bentley is coming back into it, and that's a 2018 car.
Yeah.
It's great to see the Honda doing great around Laguna, but I'd be slightly concerned for the Honda around other tracks, but I'd love to be proven wrong there.
Well, one of the things, Marius,
one of the things
that we were talking about earlier, Marius and myself were talking about, was performance ballast. Jono, surely, you know, the BOP thing goes out the window once you won a race and now you've got 80 kilos to contend with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that means guys are having to add basically a full tank of fuel, or just slightly less than a full tank of fuel for their race weekend. The intention with that ballast, and the reason why we've gone so heavy with it, is because it needs to be effective. We've seen recently where series add maybe 30 kilos, 40 kilos, and that effect is just not enough for the performance of the drivers that will be winning this season. So yeah, it is quite heavy, but it also brings a new strategy into the championship. So is winning the best case? I mean, if you're a real racing driver, yeah, it's winning every time you hit the racetrack. But are you going to be aiming for seconds, thirds? Just to try work the ballast a bit better. I don't know, and I'd love to see how this is going to pan out. But yeah, we've made the ballast definitely hurt.
Well, I'm glad you've clarified that for me, because that's what I was trying to understand. In having had to put ballast on a race car for real, I understand the effects and especially what it does from a tire wear perspective, but also strategic is where you put that ballast. So what they end up doing with like these cars, that is where the ballast gets fitted. So it's the same consistently across all cars. But I was trying to understand how Assetto Corsa would implement that. So what you're saying is quite interesting, is that it's not really noticeable unless you really slap a lot of weight in there. And I'm guessing it's not about straight line stuff. It's going to be tire wear that the guys are going to feel in a 50-minute race.
Definitely. But keeping in mind that in a race, and as short as our races are, I mean, they're far from an endurance race being 50 minutes long, we still have mandatory pit stop with a tire change.
Yeah.
So
nice.
So we are forcing drivers into making proper pit stops and not splash and dashes.
But Jonathan, you see, this for me is brilliant, because a 50-minute, if you look at the GT racing internationally, a lot of the drivers play in the short sprint season. So it is also like an hour race, and they've got a driver change and pit stop. Now, if you bring in stuff like ballast, the fact that the guy can make that change of tire is crucial too, because otherwise you literally kill that guy. So I know what you're saying in terms of guys wanting to, maybe I don't want to win. You never want that to happen in a series, but at least you guys have had the foresight to say there's going to be a tire change. So that becomes even more strategic in terms of how he manages that process, because in a 50-minute race with success ballast and no tire change, it's a dead series.
And I think what is really key is that you keep more drivers in it for longer over the season, and that comes into the car change, it comes into the ballast and all that you keep more drivers in it for that victory at the end of the season.
But I'm also loving it because I think what you're doing, and we spoke about it a lot last year, is this is legitimate. This is a sport. And we've got to move it away from being seen as a game. So the fact that you've got Motorsport South Africa endorsing it is already a step in the right direction. The fact that we have the incident reports where you're actually assessing what's going on, and you've got that in-game technology that allows you to do that, and punishment is being dealt like would happen in the real world. The drivers now have extra things to think about in terms of strategy. When do I change? Is this the time to hold back? Do I want to win at this track? I'm looking at the next circuit. I know it's heavy on my car, on my tires. Where do I want to be? There's a lot of thought that goes into it now. And that is what a real racing driver has to deal with. So I think this is brilliant. It's just you guys as the series organizers are just constantly evolving, and that's what makes it so bloody good.
And of course, touching on the Motorsport SA thing, where Motorsport SA has now introduced an e-license for sim racers to purchase that e-license, and MSA has developed an entire rule set built off of their real life racing, but geared towards sim racers. And being the Pro Series, the Mercedes-Benz ATK Pro Series, being a sanctioned event by MSA means that we fall under their MSA rule set for that license, and each driver needing to own that license for the duration of the year. It's a longer game that they're playing with the e-license, and definitely a lot of benefits that it will give sim racers in the long term. And I mean, we've had to clarify before, but it is not an ATK MSA e-license. It is an MSA e-license that will allow drivers to enter other MSA sanctioned sim racing events as well.
Incredible. I can't
So,
believe
yeah.
that we've got this kind of backing this year from MSA. That's really incredible stuff. We're on board now with Jason Abschmeyer, who's jumped into first position here, guys. So just wanted to point that out. Jason Abschmeyer in first position, but Junior McCall, who was leading for quite a bit, getting some encouragement from his dad on the live stream. I'm checking out the live stream now. Robert McCall says, keep pushing Junior McCall. And you guys were talking about the Audi earlier on. The Audi is still, according to Bruno Cadile, still one of the best all-rounded cars. But Alaric Ensland says that Audi and the Porsche got BOP'd into the ground.
Yeah, that's what I've picked up. That's what Jason was saying as well. So that is why we're not seeing you're not seeing any of them running. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one Porsche in the last session. So, but this has been a very interesting session. I've really been enjoying while Jonathan was chatting, just watching the little battle between Leslie Olifant, Junior McCall, and Jason. They've kind of been swapping positions up at the top, and what it's been doing is they've slowly been chipping away at that time that we saw Jordan set up earlier. I mean, they were 121.6, it's now down to 121.3, and they keep pushing each other. So it's quite interesting. And with obviously the combined top 30 fastest times going into the pro division for our first race, I start now having a look at, right, who's sitting in 15th position here, what sort of times are they running compared to what we saw in division 1. I think Noah Hendricks was in 15th, so it'd be nice to see for us just what those times were, so we can start getting our little head around how this game's working. But I originally thought that this could be a slower all-round second qualifying, but it's not looking that way. It's starting to take shape. If you look down to 17th is where the 2-second jump is, but the guys from there up are very, very close. There was more of a spread in the first qualifying run. I think there are a lot more guys that are a lot closer to each other here, so it's a really exciting qualifying run this.
Well, I've got the results in front of me here. Jordan shared it earlier and did a 20.9.
Yeah.
Jason Abschmeyer is now currently, as it stands, in second position with his 21.3. Alaric Ensland did a 21.4, and Jordan Junior McCall might just be behind him with his time. So,
what was Noah Hendricks in 15th? I was trying to find.
Noah Hendricks in 15th was a 122.64.
Okay, so that's what I'm trying to check now. So what is our 15th? What is De Vet doing now? What is his time?
De Vet is doing a 123 on the dot. So 123.0-ish.
And Noah was doing what, sorry?
Noah was doing a 122.6.
Okay, so you see, I mean, so you're already now seeing that first, like I'm looking at that little jump now. So Noah is pretty safe where he is at this stage, because there's a big jump. So even though this qualifying session, the guys are closer in Division 2, it looks like Division 1 was quicker times all round in terms of the drivers. Yeah.
But again, we've got Jason Abschmeyer here in second position. I mean, as we said earlier, Jordan Shedden might be in a class of his own, at least for today, at least till he gets thrown that 80 kilos after round 1. But Jason Abschmeyer now currently in second position is looking really good. For me, the big standout so far, Junior McCall. I mean, this kid is just improving, and he is only, according to my sheet here, still only 12 years old.
No, it's crazy. I mean, we were all raving about him last year, but obviously really cool in terms of their family unit, with Brother Morgan, the dad supporting. If you remember earlier on the year before ATK picked him up last year, they were sharing a wheel. So that is why they could never actually go head to head as brothers. So it's just really, really cool for me as well to see a series like this developing talent, and him rightfully taking his place in the pro division where he did so well towards the end of last season. So that for me is really, really cool. We mentioned Corne Strauss earlier. He was a kind of standout. I remember he had the purple McLaren last year. He put in some really good races. There was some good performance in that McLaren. So interesting to see him jump across to the Merc. But it looks like a lot of guys are happy with the Merc. We mentioned it earlier. It's not just, maybe it's amazing timing for Mercedes-Benz South Africa to step in as a series sponsor.
I think
at the same time as the Assetto Corsa goes and changes the regulations and brings the Evo 2020 version of the car, because it just makes sense. They're going to get massive bang for their buck, so to speak, because a lot of guys have legitimately chosen the car because it's going to be a bloody good car this year.
Well, that makes me, as I said earlier on, personally, this makes me very happy. It's always nice to see the motoring industry moving forward in what I think at least is a good direction. I could be completely wrong, but I do think sim racing is the way to go. And certainly the online space is the way to go. Early on, we were talking about Junior McCall being 12 years old. I'm looking through the sheets here. We got two guys. Philip van Zyl is 43, our oldest guy, and another 43-year-old, I think, is Marcus Steyn. That's our oldest driver. But there
Yeah.
are quite a few young drivers as well. We've got Tariq Adam, who's just 19 years old. We've got Andre Saradia, also a new driver, 17 years old. And did you know Aldo Bellingham is only 21?
Yeah, no, he's a lighty.
So there's a couple of guys, a couple of youngsters in the mix here. Most of the guys in their 20s, but a very interesting spread of guys here from all walks of life. And as we say, even a couple of pro race car drivers.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting season. Jonathan, I want to get your thought on this as well, and Ernest, be interesting. You and I were mentioning earlier, with the rule changes that they can make a car change at the halfway point, 6 rounds. So after 3 races, they can change cars. What I think is going to be interesting strategy is, like I mentioned it earlier, do guys pick a car for the first 3 based on the tracks and then look at the next 3? But what is also interesting, I've just had a look now, the White Gaming guys, White Rabbit Gaming, I mean, they've got teammates racing different cars. That's quite clever, because you've got your One Oak racing in a Merc and the other guys racing in a McLaren. Then you start realizing which car works. Do I change to that car or not? So I wonder if there's that type of strategy that's going to go into it with the teams. Obviously, for the ATK team, they're obviously supporting the sponsors. All of them are running in Mercs. So is there that type of strategy within the teams?
I wonder if there's that type of strategy. I mean, you know, these guys, when it comes to sim racing strategy, there are so many levels. In real motorsport, you've got strategy, but if you bump the car on the first corner of the first lap, then you're in the pit lane for the rest of the day, and whatever else you want to do is out the window. These guys have an endless amount of cars, tires, prep, seat time, etc. So there are so many different strategies at play here, and it's going to be interesting to see teams like the McCalls, teams like White Rabbit Gaming, ATK. You know, are these guys going to work together to try and get the results they want? And are they going to be able to use the information that they gather to beat their opponents? You know, are they going to get behind one driver? Are they going to be team orders? We don't know what's going to happen this year.
But it is, I just find that interesting, because obviously in the real racing world, if you're part of a team, then your team races that car. But here, you've got an opportunity as a team to have 2 or 3 different cars on the grid, all under the same umbrella. But with us having these rule changes now, that might work to your favor, because you're basically collating data and getting set up right for that car. So if the driver wants to make a change at the midway from the Merc into something else, he's at least got a teammate that's been running in that car that's already done the development. So I'm wondering if the guys are starting to think like that, because that would make a lot of sense to me. I mean, we've got 4 minutes to go. This qualifying's flown by, and so is Jason Upschmeyer. It's a great time, a 121.3. Like you rightly said, has put him combined second fastest. No one can touch Jordan, who dipped into the 20s with a 20.9. So yeah, that's proper car control by Quade Claessens. We saw him in a Porsche last year. He's made the jump as well. Another little Honda. We got a little glimpse of that Honda NSX to the back. I think it's a new driver as well. I think Gerber is his name. So yeah, very cool to see a lot of new names, especially in this session. A lot of guys that we haven't seen before, and then a lot of familiar names that are also there. But basically, the guys we're seeing at the top are the guys that raced really well throughout the 12 rounds last year.
Well, one of the things that was new to me last year in sim racing, even though I'd competed in sim racing before, it was in the offline days mostly. What these guys do is they chat in the Discord, so they're connected to each other. And sometimes they're teammates, sometimes they're just friends, but even during competition, they're constantly talking to each other, sometimes chirping each other, sometimes supporting one another. But it's a very different dynamic in that sense, where these guys are sometimes some of the guys are able to go really fast while still having full-on conversations at times. So you've got the situation, even during the game, the team orders are flying around all over the place. Even during the race, the team orders are flying around all over the place. So again, you know, even though there are many similarities to the real world, there are certain things that are unique to the sim world.
Yeah, but I think what's going to end up happening now, when we heard Jonathan talking about the pit stop, I think that's amazing, and it's been done legitimately, so it isn't going to have that splash and dash scenario. But now you literally are going to end up having a third teammate. You know, you're going to be a driver, and you're going to have some guy that's going to work strategy for you. And if you're going to have a look on the pit wall in Formula One, in all the endurance racing.
Yeah.
I mean, that is what it is. It's all strategy. There's a guy sitting with a computer crunching numbers and when is the right time for you to pit. So that type of stuff, when are you going to feed back in? Where are you going to feed back in? So now suddenly as a driver, cannot be driving, keeping the car on the track and be doing those calculations. So it opens up a whole new community for me in terms of developing race engineers and race strategy guys within the gaming format. So watch that happening. You're going to have a spotter. You're going to have a guy that's kind of saying, now, this is where you're going to feed back in. I'm loving it. It's just really raising the ante big time.
Yeah, last year I was lucky enough to do that for the Milk guys at Suzuka Endurance Race. It was amazing. I loved it. I loved working with the guys. I loved working as part of a team. I wasn't even driving that day, but I was hopping into the chats and talking to the guys, sitting with them alone sometimes and finding out like, where's your head at? How are you feeling? All these type of things that we use in the real world, we now do here. And it's great. As you said, it gets me excited because you've got some guy out there that doesn't necessarily want to race, or maybe he's just not fast enough. And now he gets to find a space for himself within motorsport. It's exciting. It's great stuff.
Having a look at Leslie Oliphant in a Bentley, and like we spoke about it earlier, having Daniel Rowe, Volkswagen Motorsport racing driver, him and Keegan Masters, and they were playing quite heavily in the sim community last year, new to the ATK Pro Series, and him choosing the Bentley, saying that it's a tricky car to get set up right at Laguna Seca, but believes that there's going to be some good pace from the car at the other circuit. So this is a good choice, and we're seeing good performance here, because I think Daniel finished 4th in that division, qualifying 1, and you got Leslie Oliphant in 3rd at this stage. So the Bentley does look like a car that seems to be pretty quick, and also good to see the McLaren up there. I mean, wouldn't speak much about it. There were 1 or 2 racing last year. They're definitely on more this year.
Mostly Pro-Am last year.
Yeah, but they're more racing this year, so that looks like a car that we should watch out for as well. But the Aston Martin as well, 1 or 2 of them, but really surprising, the big shift. You and I have commentated for the whole year last year, and it was a lot of Porsches and a lot of Audis, and we haven't mentioned that once. It's really cool.
Look at what we've got. We've got the screen so far. We've got about 2 minutes left. So far, Jason Abschmeyer with all 3 sectors the fastest with a 121.3. Right behind him, Junior McCall also in the 2020 version of the Mercedes with a 21.5. Right behind him, so tight, is Leslie Oliphant behind Junior McCall. Behind him, Arno Versace, another familiar name there, and JC Grobler making up the top 5 in the 22s. I can't wait to see what this collated list is going to look like. And I mean, let's look further down the list as well. You've got a whole bunch of new names. Mitchell Gerber, Seradio. I need to practice that name a little bit. And Dan Hauser. Yeah, so it's nice to see these new guys in there. And you know what, guys? If you're not featuring in the top yet, it's fine. You're welcome to the Pro Series. This is what this is about. There are a couple of guys that have worked their way up the rankings. We saw that happen last year. I think the same is going to happen this year. That's the end of qualifying for now. We'll be right back after this. I tell you what, Mercedes-Benz has come a long way with the ATK Pro Series in such a short time. They got me super excited. I went to the ADA the other day, the driving academy, and they let us drag race just like we saw in that commercial now. They've got some fast cars off the line, and today we saw they've also got some fast cars on the circuit. I think we're going to see a lot of Mercs up front today, but as we wait patiently for that list, Marius, I'm excited. I can't wait to see who ends up on top of the list.
Yeah, I think this was a really cool idea. I mean, last year, obviously, we went straight into, we're qualifying and straight away we're going racing. I think it's really cool that we've actually had this little seeding session. Obviously, the seeding continues throughout the season. So every qualifying race, or every race has a qualifying round. So it's just really nice to start the season off like this. So we get a good idea of who the main guys are, who's going to be starting in pro, who the new guys are in pro-am, and also getting our heads around, like you mentioned, so many changes in terms of car lineups. We spoke about it with Jonathan, big changes within Assetto Corsa, and we're now not seeing the Audis and the Porsches that were dominant cars last year. So that for us is super exciting. Laguna Seca, as I mentioned, I mean, everyone knows the track, not a great track from a racing driving perspective, but it certainly did deliver the goods from a qualifying run. Jordan Sherritt just, we saw his out and out pace last year, and I mean, it's there again now. Amazing lap time. The only person to dip into the 20s at 20.9, I think his time was. So that was unbelievable. But very, very close within the mid pack, and we're going to see that now when we look at our results. Going to be interesting. We'll obviously identify who our pros are going to be for our first round. I think we're going to see the usual suspects there, but I'm very impressed. There's some new names that popped in with some really cracker lap times at Laguna Seca.
Yeah, looking at the chat now, getting some feedback from the guys. Weza says that he wasn't able to get into his rhythm. He was on pace for 22.3, but unfortunately wasn't able to get into a rhythm. Bernard King said he's got his personal best, which is nice to see. So some of the guys happy, some of the guys not. I think that's always going to be the case, though. I mean, especially on a circuit like this. I think this is one of the circuits where it's easy to make a mistake. It's easy to not get something right. And to be honest with you, if it's not that great for racing, I certainly enjoyed it as a time attack circuit, as something that can challenge the guys to try and be the fastest on the circuit.
Yeah, it's quite a short circuit. So what I like is that, it's not that hard. There are 11 corners. Go and do it. But it is. There's some subtleties here with. I'm not talking about the corkscrew, but there are a lot of corners that are late apexing, or there's camber on the corner. So you've got to be patient in terms of when you get on the power. Obviously, in the real world, a little mistake like that, you're in the wall, which is a real risk here because it is narrow. There's no real big runoff. But obviously, in a Assetto Corsa, that happens. Back to the pits you go and you repair your car. We saw that happen with Jason. So, you don't have that real risk. I mean, if this was legitimate, it's a tricky track in terms of you make a mistake here, you're going to get punished big time. But it's going to be a really cool season. We mentioned it chatting with Jonathan earlier that, as ATK, always looking to improve on the product and making it the product just amazing, and they have. They learnt a lot from last season. There aren't obviously 12 rounds, only 6. There are now compulsory pit stops. There's success ballast, so it makes it a real thought process for the drivers now to figure out what cars are they going with, because they can make changes. So very, very cool. We look at our qualifying results there. Obviously, Jason Abschmeyer in the Porsche last year making the change to the 2020 Mercedes-Benz, and he'll be happy with that at 21.3. I think when we see the combined results, that will still have him in second overall. So great result. And these are guys we know. Our top 7 are people that we mentioned a lot last year. Dwayne Hall is a new name for me. So is Victor de Kock in 8th and 9th. Bernard King made the change to the Aston Martin, if I recall, and he'll be happy. You said he was happy, his best time ever, so he'll be happy with that, because that'll see him safely into the Pro Division for our first round at Imola on the 21st of March.
It's amazing, and we saw that earlier, more so with Division 1, where the new guys are mixing it up with the faster guys. And oftentimes I think the faster new guys will have had a history or some sort of pedigree in either motorsport or sim racing. So they might be new to me, but they might not be new to the sim racing scene. Whereas I think the slower guys here, they might be trying their hand at the ATK Pro Series. And I really want to encourage the guys, that are further down the grid to stick it out. And this community is really there for the guys to learn from, because you've got all the access here. You've got access to ATK, you've got access to, the pro guys. So the guys can certainly learn from that experience and work their way up, and at least hopefully get within striking distance of the Abschmeyers of the world.
Well, if you remember, it was actually so awesome. I think it was an interview with Noah Hendricks last year when he was so stoked. When I think he made it onto the podium, and it was like something that he had worked so hard to get there and to see that progress throughout a season is amazing. So what you're saying there is brilliant. I look at a guy like Francois de Villiers, 125. Dude, there is 3 months of racing, 6 rounds.
Yeah.
You're going to be getting better and better and better with each round. So for me, it's awesome to welcome new guys to the community. I think a lot of guys can legitimately do this because it is 6 rounds and not 12. It was a very long season last year, and that's why I said, like, ATK is always learning, always improving, always trying to make the product a lot better. So I think it's going to be a really exciting and intense 6-round championship this year. It's going to be brilliant.
Yeah, well, according to the ACC regulations, the guys can jump up and down the divisions. If you're in the bottom 5, as far as I know, you might go down. If you're in the top 5 of the bottom division, you will go up. So here's the official line is top 5 drivers in pre-race qualifying will be promoted to the above division for the next round. So that's a massive incentive to jump from Pro-Am back into Pro, which is also a good way to keep things exciting this year. I mean, I'm very excited for their first race of the season.
But when we used to play top flight rugby, in the old days, we had Copper Stump. Like, we used to go head to head, first team versus second team.
Yeah.
That doesn't really happen anymore. But what it does is it keeps the second team hungry and it keeps the first team sharp. And that's what's going to happen here with the driving as well, where the guys know they can't make a mistake because every qualifying session is going to be critical. So these are our drivers that will be racing on the 21st of March in our Pro-Am division. Couple of familiar names there: Jason Isherwood, Etienne Kleb, Wesley Hampson, Jason Gray, Byron Walker. A lot of guys we saw last year, Sean Mumford, but also a lot of new guys as well. So I think it's going to be interesting for me, I like this because we're going to be commentating with a lot of new guys, and it's going to be interesting to track their progress. So that's going to be a good lineup of well-known guys and some new kids on the block.
Well, it's also going to be cool for guys like Wesley Hampson. Wesley's not the kind of guy that's going to sandbag. So his actual potential, he told me he said in the chat, was a 22.2. So you've got a guy now that could be winning his first race of the season. It's Pro-Am division, of course, but I mean, that sets him up. Byron Walker, another one that's going to be quick. Jason Isherwood as well, also in it to win it. Leon Leroux.
I was quite surprised. Yeah, because I mean, he was pretty quick in that Aston last year. We didn't even mention him at all in the division qualifying. I didn't even see if he changed cars. So I'm not even sure what he's running in. But we know that he's got real potential and he's got massive experience as well. So he'll definitely not want to be sticking around in Pro-Am.
Yeah, I think some of the guys, Ian McKenzie, the guys further down that raced last year, maybe even Leon Leroux, I think a lot of the guys took a bit of a sabbatical from Assetto Corsa and then realized maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago, hey, the season is starting. I might want to turn a wheel or two. And now figure out that, it's a difficult game to dial into. I mean, it's someone that had to learn from the get-go. I mean, I've played other sims and other car games, and this is by far one of the most difficult ones to really dial into. So I think if a week or two of preparation might not even be enough. And then, if you've got any sort of competition coming up, a week's preparation, if you know it's not enough, that's even worse.
No, exactly.
Because now your head is messing with you. And I loved what you said earlier on, keeping the second team guys hungry and the first team guys sharp. And here we go to the first team. Top of the first team, the quarterback of the first team, Jordan Shedid, with a 20.9. Just unbelievable stuff.
Unbelievable time. You know what I was laughing at now? I'm just having a look at Jason van Rooyen at the bottom with a 22.665, and I feel so sorry for Zillan Harding because I think he was like a 22.666 or something stupid. So it was like so close. But that is what top flight motor racing is all about. It is close, and amazing time by Jordan. So he's certainly put his hand up and saying, listen guys, I pretty much should have been there right at the very end, going head to head with Zaire for the title. This is my true pace. So that's a brilliant lap time, and Jason will be super stoked with that. Our fastest qualifier from Division 2, ending up in second position, with Jordan obviously fastest qualifier in 1 and best overall. But great, Daniel Rowe, well done. Nice to see you joining us at the ATK Pro Series as well in 4th. Sean Stratham, new name.
Wow,
The
legit debut.
fastest new guy
Yeah.
in sixth, because I know Alaric did do one race last year with us, but that's brilliant, and that was in that Honda NSX, so that is a great result. For sure, Jadwat, we're going to see a lot more from him, because I don't think he'll be happy sitting down in eighth. But Junior, you can high five and go crazy. You pipped your brother Morgan down in ninth. So some team rivalry and family rivalry starting early.
Look at the difference.
Yeah.
Less than 0.2 of a second, and
Close,
that changes them from 4th place to 9th place. I think also we've got a situation here where we've got a few guys, and I think the new guys are going to feel this during the race, is that you've got a couple of guys here that, look, they might not have been the fastest in the air quotes seeding day, but these are guys that have raced the series before, they've raced with each other before, so there's that familiarity. And I think you've got guys like Bruno Cadile, Corne Strauss, Jason Webb, Charles Wilkin, Morgan McCall, Bash, that are going to find themselves a couple of positions up the placings when the flag drops.
For sure. I mean, there are a couple of names, like you mentioned, Charles Wilkin there. Obviously, we didn't see him today because he posted his time yesterday because he couldn't make the session. So there are a couple of other names that have dropped in there and mixed things up a little bit. But I think this is a fantastic list of pro drivers for our very first round, and we're going to such a great track as well. I mean, Imola is an absolute cracker circuit, and I like the fact that we're going to different tracks as well. So that for me is super exciting. It's going to be a good season, 6 amazing rounds, and looking forward to seeing who is going to be the fastest sim racer for 2021. Nice.
Oh, sure. I think we are definitely going to be finding that out. And now with the influx of clearly some new talent, I think word's going to get out that the Mercedes-Benz ATK Pro Series is certainly going to be drawing even more talent over the course of the season, or at least some interest from guys that are saying, you know what, I want a piece of that action. But don't forget, we've got GT Sport tomorrow.
This is good. This is really good. No, Ernest, I mean, for me, I'm old school, so I kind of was always the PlayStation guy.
Same.
So, this was new to me, the Assetto Corsa vibe, and obviously PC based. But I think, again, it just shows our ATK is trying to grow the online racing community by now having this GT Sports Series. So I think that for me is super cool. So that's tomorrow night at 7. But what I think is really cool about it, what I love, is we don't have any of this debate about what car am I picking, what am I going to race for the season, blah, blah. Each round, they've got 6 rounds as well, there is an allocated car for that round. And every single car, great for Mercedes-Benz as our title sponsor, because every car is a Mercedes-Benz. So they're going to be in one of the Formula 1 cars for a round. They'll be in one of the older Mercs. That's, for me, a GT3 Merc. It's just really cool, because in all of the drivers,
old big GT3 Merc as well, eh?
Yeah, and the cool thing is all of the drivers are on the same track in the exact same car, so there is nothing to choose from here but pure talent. So that for me is what I'm going to find super exciting about doing that as well. So we've got these guys. There's going to be a whole new bunch of guys we're going to get to meet tomorrow night at 7 when we commentate on that. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I think it's a master stroke having both coming together.
Well, there's more to talk about when it comes to prizes. At the end of all of this, we got the MSA Showdown, and guys are going to be selected to rep South Africa at the FIA Motorsport Games. I mean, that is an absolute huge deal.
Sure, yeah.
That is the dream. We both know Ashley Oldfield, who won the GT Academy a couple of years ago. Mogotsi also did well in the GT Academy, and these guys went on to have careers in motorsport to a degree. Mogotsi still racing. Yeah. So this is something that can springboard the right candidate into literally a career of motorsport, which is the dream for all of these guys here. All 55 drivers here today want to be professional drivers, I'm pretty sure. So
Ernest, but the cool thing too is, I mean, yes, there is that. I mean, obviously that's the dream. But for a lot of guys, this has become a sport. So you just want to be the best in your sport, because you're getting recognized, you're getting rewarded, there's prize money, you're legitimate. You know what I mean? So it's not about, I need to do this so I can become legitimate because I'm going to now drive a real car.
Yes.
This has become legitimate in itself. So, there are going to be guys that potentially will want to cross over. But I think it's just created a new form of motorsport. Like Junior McCall, this might be what all he wants to bloody do, is be the best sim racer in the world. It's the real deal.
Look, I know we've had this conversation before, and I've certainly sat on both sides of that fence in certain conversations. But man, I'm excited that the bridge is there either way. You know, if the guys want to take that step, they can. If they don't want to take that step, that's cool too. But we're building that bridge with the ATK Pro Series, backed by Mercedes-Benz South Africa, and giving these guys options that I think many guys over the years would have loved to have access to.
Yeah, no, it's been
tough.
Yeah, it's just exciting for us, because I mean, I know you've been heavily involved in this community. It was new for me last year, and I was blown away by the level of professionalism in terms of how the ATK Pro Series was run. And I mean, that's all the guys here at ATK. Daniel editing, Jonathan, Warren, everyone who puts all the effort together to make this thing happen. And it's legitimate when you look at it. It's the real deal. And for me, just to see the progression. Not only from a driving perspective, but in terms of the show. And that is why you now have a brand like Mercedes-Benz saying, hello, we want to be a part of this, because we see real potential here. That you've got Motorsport South Africa backing it up, and obviously Kyle Army 9 Hour as well. So, you've got the best race in South Africa, the Kyle Army 9 Hour, and you've got the best sim races being developed in the ATK Pro Series. So it all just fits beautifully.
So from your side, Marius, before we end things off, what are your thoughts? Who is your standout? Name a couple of standout drivers. I mean, I'll throw some names in there. You got Jordan Shedder, Jason Abschmeyer, Elric Ensel, Junior McCall, Sean Stadom, Daniel Rowe. Who do you have that stand out for you as guys to potentially watch this season?
Well, I think it's going to be so flippin' difficult for us, because if you asked me that question based on last year, I would have obviously been looking for who's in a Porsche, who's in an Audi, and kind of been making my decisions based on that. But I think for us, what's exciting is it's all new. We don't know how these new cars, the new spec, how it's all going to flippin' pan out at the end of the day. So yes, we can take a lot out of what we've now seen in qualifying, but qualifying is totally different to a race. It's a 50-minute race. There's now going to be tires changed. There's going to be a compulsory fuel stop. So it becomes very, very difficult now to go. It's not just out and out pace. Yes, we know Jordan Sherritt. We know he's bloody fast. But now suddenly for me, a guy like Daniel Rowe with his real racing experience, that becomes crucial when we start getting into the races with pit stops and strategy. Those are the sort of guys, and the Charles Wilkins, who will now start finding themselves a lot more comfortable in that environment. And I think people that are in teams like Jason Abschmeyer has got his team, ATK have got their team. There's going to be a lot of strategy in terms of helping the guys in the car when to pit and what to do. So it's very, very hard, I think, to call it. That first race for me is going to be very, very interesting, because it's totally different for us too, to what we saw last year.
Well, there you have it, folks. That was Division 1 and Division 2 qualifying. Thanks to all you guys that were watching out there in the stream. And of course, this is brought to you by Mercedes-Benz South Africa and ATK. And I tell you what, we can look forward to one heck of a season. Marius Roberts, thank you for joining me as always. I'm excited, bro. I'm excited.
But listen, this was awesome, because I didn't get to do it from the comfort of my lounge. I actually came to the ATK arena, and I'm blown away. I'm like, oh my word, this is like a proper setup. So, yeah, maybe I should kind of be here for all of the events, because I really feel like I'm in race mode when I sit here. But yeah, Ernest, lucky to work with you again, and looking forward to a great season. You're a legend. Good man.
So yeah, maybe come to Cape Town, maybe pop into ATK. In the words of your show, just to see how far it is. Now you know where Cape Town is, folks. That's it from us. We'll see you guys at round 1 Imola, and tomorrow stay tuned for the GT division at 7 o'clock. My name is Ernest Page, joined by Marius Roberts. Thanks for joining us. See you soon.